Okay, ready when you are.
Well, I'll wait another minute to see if Ryan or Rachel come on. I haven't seen them come on yet. In the interim, I'll read the letter of the anchor chair. The Planning Commission Chair of the Town of Hideout hereby determines that conducting a meeting with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location pursuant to Utah Code Section 52-4-207 subsection 4 and Hideout Town Ordinance 2020-03. The facts upon which this determination is based include the percent number of positive COVID-19 cases in Utah has been over 7.22% of those tested since April 1st, 2021. The 7-day average of positive cases has been over 400 since April 6, 2021. This meeting will not have a physical anchor location. All participants will connect remotely. All public meetings are available via YouTube live stream on the Hideout Utah YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/channel/UCKDWNJAD. Okay.
Great. Now I am. Okay.
That being done, we'll now take roll call. Bruce is not here. He said, send me an email saying he can't make it. Donna?
Yes.
Glynis?
She's muted.
Ryan?
Here.
Tony's here. Rachel?
I'm here.
Okay.
Glynis is there. She's unmuted
I'm
now.
here.
Good.
I'm unmuted.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. Okay, that with attendance being taken, before we start anything else, I'm just going to make a few announcements. Number one, the only thing that will be open to public hearings in this meeting will be Deer Springs Phase 2 and 2B, the final subdivisions. The agenda items for Shoreline Phase 2 and Phase 3 subdivision will not be open for public hearing. That's number one. Number two, going forward, Nate and Glenn and Wade, this particularly pertains to you guys, and just only because you're the developers. Going forward, if you want to be scheduled for a planning commission meeting, all your materials will have to be submitted to Alicia 2 weeks prior to the meeting date. Otherwise, they will not make the calendar. There'll be no exceptions to that. Just so and that will also be incorporated in all the paperwork going forward. Okay, that being said, do I have someone who wants to approve the minutes? Does anybody have any comments in regard to the minutes from the last meeting?
We don't have any minutes on this agenda, Tony.
Okay.
That'll be on the regular meeting.
Gotcha. That being said, then we'll go right to the public hearing for Deer Springs Phase 2 and 2B. Thomas, are you on that you want to say anything, or you want to just start right with Nate?
Sure. No, why don't I just give a quick overview, and then I'll turn it over to Nate, because I know that he's got his engineer here who wanted to walk you through some visuals, et cetera. But I could just give you a real quick overview. Let's see. I could share my screen real quickly. Let's see. Can you all see that?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. So again, this is for Deer Springs Phase 2 and 2B. You have This one has already received preliminary subdivision approval for these phases, but this is for final subdivision approval. And so there's been a little bit of renaming. This was what we had originally thought of as phase 2 and phase 3, but now it's going to be designated phase 2 and 2B. As you can see here, I've kind of got a quick outline of, or a quick overview of the area where can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, so my cursor is right over here. This is Bellevue. This is phase 1. This is the subdivision that's already received final subdivision approval and is under construction right now. So this is Bellevue. So phase 2B is the loop here. And then phase 2 takes you right up here to the Jordan L. Parkway. So just to give you guys a little bit of context with regard to where this is. I'll zoom to this map here. And again, you can see 248, of course. This is Bellevue, phase 1 that was approved. This is this loop right here, all the way up to this white road, which is Jordan L. Parkway, just to give you guys all context. All good in terms of locating it? And again, we're looking north here. Okay. So this was, we kind of worked with Nate over the course of the past 6-8 weeks or so, and Ryan and I had some concerns with regard to the scale of the retaining walls. One of the retaining walls was kind of a terraced retaining wall that was almost 60 feet or 60 plus feet in height. And we had some concerns about that. You guys had expressed some concerns about that at one of our prior meetings. And so we worked with Nate to eliminate some of those retaining walls. Our new code doesn't apply to Nate's project. This is based on the MDA and the old code, but Nate was willing to work with us, recognizing there are certain health, safety, and welfare concerns with regard to the walls. So we've worked closely with him and his engineers to do, to kind of redesign this, tweak the roads a little bit, get the slopes for the roads a little bit better, as well as eliminate some of those retaining walls. Part of that was done by way of moving the roads a little bit, and part of that was done as a result of kind of tweaking where some of the building fabric, where the buildings would actually go. And so before I go too far into this report, and before I talk about the park and some of the timing, it's probably better for you all to hear from Nate and his engineer, Tyler. And maybe, I think Tyler may want to share screen. He can kind of walk you through some of the changes they've made to improve this project. So I could turn it over to them. And then we have some conditions and issues that we want to address with you all before we go too far beyond that. Nate?
Thomas,
Yeah.
real quick, Ryan Taylor, I just wanted to add, in addition to the walls, we worked with them on the road. The road originally had a number of concerns, and they were working with them. Those have all been resolved as well. So the plan we're seeing tonight resolves a lot of the wall issues. It also realigned the road to resolve a number of concerns that we had.
That's right. And I think that as Tyler walks you through, Ryan and I can supplement where some of those changes were made. Just real quickly before I turn it over to them, just so everybody has an understanding of this diagram, this is Jordan L. Parkway right there. This point where the blue line is the SR 248 right there. This will give you a sense of the slopes that are going on in this area. So Jordan L. Parkway will be the higher elevation, kind of slopes down in, does a little valley and slightly rises as we get to along this yellow line as we get over toward 248, just to give you a little context of kind of the layout of this topography and this valley. Nate, are you on? And I think maybe Tyler.
Yes, I'm on. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm on. I'm
Stop
PT
sharing.
or Mark or Nate. I'm wondering if one of you guys can share your screen. I'm not in a position where I can do that. Do one of you have the exhibits that you can pull up that I can speak to?
Thomas, can you share your screen? How about have Thomas share his screen?
I just have the images. I don't have anything that I can pan around in. Is that okay?
Yeah,
I'm
just the images.
unfortunately- Yeah, I'm driving. I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina, driving to my hotel, and so I'm not able to do that. But Mark Garza should have that.
Yeah, those right there, Thomas. Those will work. Okay, so
Okay.
this is Tyler. I guess I'll walk through these exhibits with Thomas's help. Thank you. I'm out of town and it may be windy, so stop me if you can't hear. I can try to get in a better spot if you can't hear me.
You're good now.
Okay. So there are two issues that we tried to solve on the site. The first one was the road grades. We had two sections of about a total of 500 or 600 feet in two separate sections that were greater than 10%. They were 12%. So we worked with Ryan and came up with an alternative design of those to try to get those as close to 10% as possible. So the road that goes from Jordan L. Parkway down to phase one, that sort of loops its way around, we were able to get that to 10% in most of the sections. And then one section, we got it to 10 and about 1/4% the rest of the way. It does have something to do with the second problem with the walls. In most cases, in one case, there was sort of a casualty. It did add a little bit of wall behind us, one unit, but because the cuts were deeper in one of the sections because of that milder grade, and you can see the steepness of the site that Thomas had in that previous exhibit. So it is a steep site. The less grade you have in the roads will cause greater cuts and a little bit greater walls. But we think that the solution that we've come up with is much better than what was before. The second issue was the number of walls and the tiering of walls. So working with Thomas and Ryan both, we were able to shift the upper road that runs essentially parallel to the Jordan L. Parkway. We moved that 75 feet closer in alignment to the parkway. And that allowed us to spread out a little bit between the phase two and what will be, I'll call it for phase three right now, that loops around, it connects into the cul-de-sac that's kind of in the foreground of both of these shots. So what we wanted to show with these two exhibits was the effect on the walls between those units, both the downhill units and uphill units between 2 and 3, where Thomas is circled there. So by moving that 75 feet, we're able to eliminate those walls in between those two units. In addition to that, in phase 3 and 2B, we were able to move some of the units on the downhill side of the phase 3 loop road, where it connects into the phase 2B road, into the future phase 4 over by the park. Doing that eliminated a lot of those back-to-back tiered walls where we had 60 plus feet of retaining in between those. So what we ended up with was on the uphill side of that phase 2 road, you can see there, it starts on the north end of that road toward where it connects in with Jordan L. Parkway. And it's the exhibit below. So the two exhibits that you see, just to give you some orientation, that the top one is the way it used to be. The bottom one is the proposed design that we submitted plans on. You can see that it eliminated a lot of those walls that are between phase 2 and phase 3. And that was really the point of doing that shift in roadway. The other thing it did on the uphill side of, so between the phase 2 road and the Jordan L. Parkway, those walls stay roughly the same. Where up near where it connects into the Jordan L. Parkway, that road sits basically at grade. But as you head down toward the south, way in the background of both of these exhibit, where it turns that corner, that's where it gets a little bit. The wall actually increased a little bit where it turns that corner, but that was it's a fourplex down there that we had to add a little bit of height to because the cut got greater because of the mild grade. But you can see that there's a significant decrease in the presence of walls, especially where you sort of travel through the development. And we think that we ended up with a design that more matches kind of the new ordinance that Hideout has set for walls and tiering. And we think that this is a good plan and a better plan, but those are the measures that we've taken to decrease the road grades and decrease the tiering of walls and the amount that actually had to be retained between the two phases.
Commissioners, did you have any questions? Were you able to orient there, or do you want me to point anything out specifically?
Anything confusing in that, or anything you want me to go over again, or any questions that you might have?
Yeah, how wide is the road?
It is 32 feet
Okay.
from back of curb to back of curb. And then the setbacks are 25 feet to the front of the building.
So the maximum road slope and the road width are compliant with the new code we passed for the safe road standard.
I
A
want
question for me?
Yeah, Nate, I just want to say that I really do appreciate your, I'm sorry, I don't know if somebody else is talking or that's just background noise.
That's me. Sorry, I'll be.
That's all right. I appreciate you know, adjusting that. I really do like the look of it much better. You know, and I appreciate, you know, you working with us here on that. I did have one question on the new plan too, is the homes that directly below the Jordanelle Parkway on, I guess that's phase 2, to the right side of the red circle, right there. Some are to the inside the circle. Yeah, right there. How steep is that? Because I went over there today, and boy, that's a steep hill. I mean, are those? And what are they? Are they fourplexes, duplexes?
They vary. So there are some triplexes, a lot of fourplexes.
like
There's a
orange?
duplex,
Okay.
but that grade varies. It's about a 3-to-1 or a 4-to-1 slope where it goes up into Jordanelle Parkway, and there is a slope easement back there that we had to contend with off of the Jordanelle Parkway as well.
Okay, so the back of those homes are basically, most of them are going to be into the ground, into the side of the slope, underground.
Well, the north ones won't be. The backyards of those, since they come out to grade, they do rise 1 floor in elevation. They're kind of under, so they're uphill, what we call uphill units. So when you pull into the garage, you go up the floor, and that means floor will be at grade. Those are the north units, and then as the road falls gently, or well, I guess not so gently, 10% toward the south, they gradually do get a little bit lower in grade at that upper floor where there will be walls in back of the units. But they start gradually, like I think the walls start at the third unit, where they start to get retaining, sort of official retaining walls where they have to be greater than 2 or 3 feet. And then as you go from unit to unit, they get taller until they go around that corner where it gets to the worst case, to the corner unit.
Tyler, in that area, how tall will those walls be? How many terraces, how tall?
In the worst case?
Mhm.
Yeah.
On the single building, so let's keep in mind that it's a single building, but because of that grade 10% going through there, and we had to steepen the cut, it actually does have 6 tiers, but we pushed it used to be 5 in the old design. It's now 6, but we pushed that 6th tier 25 feet away from that top wall, because we were away from the slope easement. So it doesn't go up 6 straight way. It just has 5 like it used to be in the original design.
And is each tier how many feet?
Those are 6 feet.
Okay.
And that's what they were before.
So Tyler, these walls over here went from 5 to 6 terraces. And what happened in this area approximately? How many tiers were existing, and how many terraces are there now?
Sorry, I didn't see where did you
I'm
mark?
sorry, I'm between kind of phase 2 and 2B, that first slope down.
Oh, so there were 4 walls. Now it varies from a single wall to 4 walls. There might be one unit that has 5.
So instead of all the units having 4 or 5 walls, it goes from kind of left to right, starting at 1 wall, and then towards the end, 4 to 5.
Yeah. Yeah, that was sort of the trade-off between moving that road toward Jordan Parkway, was that while we were able to gain a little bit in elevation, but we also exposed against the Jordan Parkway and lessened that grade. So on the upper portion, it was okay, but then where we couldn't steepen the road and kind of have a steeper curve to match more the natural grade, made us cut a little bit more. So that's the reason for the increase in height on that upper side. But then the trade-off was on the downhill side. There were no walls that you can see behind other units.
Is there anyone that we had to get sign off from to connect into Jordan Parkway, and do they look at our grade and the approach and all that?
Well, we'd have to apply for actually, it's a single road. It was I'm not sure if it's a UDOT park or a UDOT right away or not. But I do know we have that easement. Just a slope easement, but yeah, we will have to have an access permit from whichever entity owns that.
So, the road that starts all the way down at phase 1, that will go all the way, it'll go all the way to the Jordan Parkway?
That's correct. Yeah, we needed 2 access, fire access, so we had to connect those 2 roads in phase 2.
Okay.
Tyler, if you'll mute your phone after you get done talking. I don't know if you're at the fair or what, but it's very noisy.
Thank you.
That's better. Or maybe move where you're sitting. There's someone very noisy. Let me just give you a couple questions or a couple answers to some of your questions. So one of the reasons we're doing this is last year when we were trying to get approval, we actually were, we had the issue with the fire department. And so we were going to go down from Jordan Parkway, 24, 25 lots and just stop there and not make the connection until next year. But because sales have been so good and we wanted to make the connection, we've decided to combine 2A and 2B this year. And so that's a little bit of why we are trying. And we've been working with staff, mainly Ryan and Thomas and Dylan since November, trying to get the walls. They were never happy with the walls that we had. And we've reduced, I bet you 50 or 60% of our walls. And we moved a couple units around. And I can just tell you, like Lakeview Estates, this is a much better layout than what we started with in November. And so I just want to tell them thank you. I've told them thank you several times. Even though it took from November, we have a much better development here this go around. It did take several months, and we're hoping we can get the improvements in on Jordan Parkway so we can connect to Jordan Parkway this year. And that's why we've asked for this special meeting. I want to just say thank you for allowing us to have this special meeting, because we need to get started with the grading in May to be able to make that connection this year with how late the season is. But, like I say, we've reduced, I want to say 50 or 60% of our walls. We got rid of the 12% road. And this was all because of Thomas and Ryan and them just pushing and pushing and pushing to get a better development, which we ended up with. And so that's kind of where we're at today. We still have several walls. This, as you can see, this is a very hard piece of property. I didn't know how hard it was going to be to develop until you really get in and do the engineering, but it's a very difficult piece to develop. But people love it. We have had so much success that we're excited to make that connection. We think the connection for the town, the Jordanelle Parkway, is just a total plus and a benefit. And we're trying to make it this year rather than next year. So I guess, I'm not being able to see the map because I'm out of town. I can see it a little bit, but I know that we reduced several walls, and we have a much better layout and development because of the hard work from the town. So just wanted to say that.
Okay.
Let's see, this is just another image. Tyler, can you see this? I know you might be.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to walk through here, but this one probably illustrates, just for the planning commission's clarification, you could start to see the walls that were up in this location, the top image where my cursor is, and right below it. Those have been significantly reduced. And again, some of the units have been moved as well. So that might be slightly easier to see. And so everybody is oriented. This is, of course, 248. And this area that I'm circling is the park area, just for orientation. So north is kind of to the right.
Circle that again, Thomas, please. I'm sorry, I missed that right
Can you
there.
see that?
Yep, all right, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
That's the area where we kind of moved units on that downhill side. And then we were able to have a single wall at the top and a single wall at the bottom at the roadway in place of those units. But then we would catch a 3-to-1 slope after the wall to the existing grade. And then it'd be existing grade down to the lower roadway in phase 3.
And are the utilities, will they be underground, the utility poles?
Yes, we will never put utilities above ground.
Okay. So the
Are you
electric
talking about the power poles?
No, the power, the electric,
Yeah,
the
power.
electricity.
Power will all be underground. We have the existing lines, which we won't, we can't put those under, but any lines we put in will be in the roads or in the easements
Okay,
underground.
okay, good. And to the left of the circle, there's like a clumping of buildings to the left. And I see like some, exactly right. And there's like a tier, see like 3 tiers down there. Is that part of 2A, 2B that we're discussing tonight?
That's 2B, yeah.
Yeah, so what is that? What are those retaining walls there? Because that looks a little high also.
Yeah, that was one area that stayed roughly the same, given that was at a 12% grade, and now it's at a 10% grade. So that area stayed roughly the same. It's kind of a steeper spot. Those were not ones that the road grade didn't allow us to get rid of.
And,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to ask. It's kind of hard to see what the buildings are. I mean, the buildings are. They're just like white blobs. Do you have any of the architectural views?
Well, it's the same. It's the exact same buildings that we're building today in phase 1. And so, yeah, this is just not even an artist rendition. It's just a drawing showing you basically where the walls were and what walls we reduced. And that's all that these drawings are showing. But it's the same buildings that we're building today. So if you go out to our project, you'll see a duplex. We might make that, well, not might, but we would make that into make those into fourplexes, just putting 4 units together. But it's the same architecture that you'll see in our development today. And I think honestly, we went through design review with the 4 members that are in that committee, and they've done a great job, and we have just sold the heck out of everything. People love our units. They did a great job in making changes, and color schemes, etc.
Well,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I got to tell you, Nate, like I said, I appreciate you, you're working with us here on a lot of things, especially making the roads 26 feet of asphalt across and according to code and following code. I really, really appreciate that. One thing it's really standing out to me. It just looks like a pretty, I mean, I drove out there today on my way home from work. Number one, the plans were really, this was a lot to digest in 24 hours. It was really, really tough looking at this and while I'm at work and late at night last night. So that's one thing. Just would appreciate more time to digest this. But I do see, it just seems very high density in that small canyon. I like what you've done so far, but it just seems out of character. Just throwing that in, throwing more density in that small area, it just seems out of character for a hideout. I'd be willing to look at duplexes and triplexes, maybe duplexes and throw in some triplexes, but I am really, considering from what I've seen from other developers here, I really do not like duplexes, and especially in that small area.
Actually, I had some questions. I was waiting till we got further along in Thomas's presentation, I guess, or his write-up, because if you go to the next page, Thomas, I don't know, next page. Okay. So down at the bottom there, number 5 and number 6, it says that that there's 48 units, and you questioned whether the number increased from 45 to 48. And actually, I like that there's a mixture of 4plexes, 3plexes, and 2plexes. But when you look at the Exhibit A, Deer Springs Phase 2 subdivision plat, there's actually, if you count them, there's 50. So I'm a little confused about the difference in numbers. And is there any way that they can be either like, I don't know what the slope is behind those houses, but can they, like, they're all lined up? Like, what is it with developers and lining stuff up? Can we like give it some variation?
You mean like these lines here, maybe?
Well, like, I mean, move this one back a little bit, and this one doesn't have the same frontage, and then the next one goes back a little bit, or it maybe this one is oriented, I don't know what the view is here, but oriented maybe a little bit more this way, or just so that they're not all boom, 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 boom.
Nate,
I don't know if
you might be able to speak to that.
Yeah.
I think you probably have room to give some articulation. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can answer the first question about the number of units, and I can respond a little bit to the variation while we do the planning. The number of units, we were getting into that we did move a duplex from 2B into 2 because there was too much retaining behind that duplex that's there on the south side. You can see that is near, yep, that one right there. Thanks, Thomas. And it was ending up, the walls were too many behind there to add before we got into that slope easement. So we had to move that into phase 2. So that's the difference between the 48 and 50. The other one is when you start to, especially where it's steep, if you start to vary the setbacks from meeting setback to greater setbacks, that just increases walls, because you're either digging further into a steep slope and adding walls on the uphill side, or you're adding relief between the back of the unit and the slope on the downhill side. So really in mountainous areas that you really want more closer setbacks to the road, than further, because that just makes you spread your elevation further back away from the road and into or on top of the slopes that are already falling uphill or downhill from the units.
Okay. Then I guess the only other way to kind of spread it out a bit might be to remove one or two. No?
Or to allow some to move closer to the road and keep other ones further back. That would be another way to do it.
Yeah,
So
that was,
rather than move some further back, move some closer to the road. That would
Tyler, what's
be
the
okay.
setback now? Is everything at 25?
yeah.
Everything's at 25.
So there is a little bit of ability to play kind of between 22 and 25, 22 and 26, something like that, and still park an F-150 out front.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would hope not to get greater than 25 because, you know, at a 3-to-1 slope, it's natural. Every foot you add, you know, well, it doesn't seem like a lot to your walls.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and you know, what can you say? I mean, would you be open to maybe, like I said, instead of having so many fourplexes, you know, taking out all but a couple of the fourplexes? I just feel like, especially on the right side of that road, it just looks so, you know, what's the word? Vanilla looking. It's all the same. And like similar to what Glynis is saying, is there any way we can, you know, you'd work with us and maybe taking out some of the fourplexes and moving them to either duplexes or triplexes?
The one thing that you'll notice is that our buildings have a lot of different dimensions, and it's not, I don't think it's going to look like that. Plus the rise in the road, it's not going to look like track housing or row housing. You're going to have quite a bit of difference in elevation just because the rise in the road. And like I say,
It's dense, that's all. It seems dense to me in the small area, the canyon in there.
Nate, what if there were a couple of units that did go to duplexes so that, you know, they did kind of, instead of having a fourplex at one level, I guess if you had duplexes, they would kind of offset a little bit, right? A little bit more than if it were just 4 in a row. What if we were able to squeeze a few in there?
We could probably, we could look at that. We can't lose any density.
No, not density, but I just mean breaking them up. Kind of like what you've got in phase 1.
Well, yeah, I think that would be fine if it all fits.
Yeah, that's the issue. Is you break them up into duplexes, you're going to have spacing between units with that, which then would probably make us have to shift units from one place to another. But part of this exercise too was that if you look in phase 3 and part in phase 2, we moved 11 units from the phase 2, phase 3 intersection to phase 4. So there actually is less density upper in the 2 and 3 area. So while this area might seem like it got a little bit less dense, 2B and that phase 3 are actually less dense than they used to be. But I think breaking things up into duplexes, you know, depending on what Nate wants to do, we would have to add more space in between those units, which might make us lose units. And the other thing too is that you can't see here in 3D is that another thing that breaks them up is we had to step the units a lot between units on the steeper sections. So in this 10% sections, we had to step the units for sometimes 6 feet, so they seem like they're different. So they don't really mass like a big fat fourplex sitting in a single line at a single elevation.
Yeah,
so
it's
we
not
do.
Gonna,
yeah, I think it's all hard. It's just hard to see.
Yeah, you know, as you can see, if you can imagine the road going up at a 10% slope, our units, we don't grade our site and build on a flat lot. We will step our building. It's not going to look anything like we've graded the entire site and put, you know, rows of housing there. It's not going to look like that. You're going to have quite a bit of different elevation just because of the way the slopes are.
Well, I was even thinking that, you know, especially in that canyon, it isn't like you're looking, right at the lake and everything, or at the Jordanelle Reservoir. I would think that the triplexes and duplex, would give people more windows and they would sell better and sell at a higher price. So I thought you would want that. I could be wrong. You just want you need to keep the density the same.
Well, there's several reasons why we have to keep density. If you look at our approvals, there were several things we had to do and pay for as part of, not as part of the density, but as part of the annexation. And we've brought in different partners, and based off the 248 units on, it's 90 acres also. So don't forget, so that's about 2.3 or 4 units per acre. So like I say, the map may look different, but you're only a duplex or so per acre. You're a little more than a duplex per acre. So, I don't feel like it's too dense. And fourplexes, we're trying to keep, prices have escalated so high because of material costs, and this development site is hard. And so we're trying to keep prices at a price where families and people can afford them. In Deer Waters, it's completely different. We're on the lake, and those lake views are incredible.
Right.
And we're over $1 million there. We're trying to be 650, 700 here. And if we were to do some of the things that we're talking about, we're upwards of 750, 800. And, we just don't want to do that.
Are there any, there's 2s, there's 3s, and there's 4s?
Yes.
Do you do any 1s?
We have
smaller,
we have 60 single family lots. And in phase 1, I think we had 16. Every one of those are sold. And in phase 1, we had 31 townhomes. Every one of those are sold. So this project is completely sold out with what we have developed so far, single family and townhomes. This phase 2 is it's all townhomes. Phase 3, I can't remember, around the park, we might have some single family and townhomes, but we have 60 townhomes mixed within the development. And we try to give the single family lots the views of the lake, and the townhomes views of the mountains. So.
And how big are the units? So what am I trying to ask? So if you have a 2, how big are they? If you have a 3, how many square feet? If there's a 4, like, are the 4s 2,500 square feet, and the 3s are maybe 3,100 square feet, and the 4s
let me see if PT, he's with Homes, if he knows that. I'm not in charge of sales. I'm in charge of the development part of this. And so Homes, PT works for Homes, and he can answer that question.
And I'm sorry, I have to get going. I have to go to work. Thank you very much, Nate. I appreciate what you've contributed, and with everything else and the changes.
Hey, thank you. PT, are you on? Can you answer the question about square footages?
Well, we're waiting. Can we just confirm? We have a quorum, right? I believe we do, but I can't see everyone on the screen. So
we have Glynis, Ryan, myself, and Rachel.
Great.
PT sent me a text and he's not able to speak.
Glynis.
Okay. I think part of it is like I can't see the
Patrick Todd is his name, actually.
Okay, no, I just mean I can't see the the architectural views, and so that I don't have a sense for like how the scale.
Yeah,
is what it is.
I believe Alicia gave me some unmuting. Can you guys hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like Nate mentioned, Thomas, if you were to scroll down, it will kind of show, it doesn't give us a lot, right? We're still, like Nate mentioned, we're using the same footprints we'll be using from phase one in our duplexes and building fourplexes and threeplexes. Maybe just to like something that shows this. Okay, that'll work. If you look at these on this uphill side, the ones that are closest to Jordan L. Parkway, the depths and stuff of these change. Each one of these units have a different style. These are all uphill on that left-hand side. Some are shallower. Like you mentioned, they're going to have a, square footage. Exact square footages, I would say somewhere between, on the smaller units, 18 to 25. And then, on these walkouts that are on the other side, you've got some of these big buildings that are they're bigger on the ends. That'll be a master down variation to those units, which will be, obviously bigger, but, more as a, they're built kind of more like our Deer Waters plans. They're actually really very similar. So there's a lot of variations in the uphill and downhill units and sizes and changes to kind of give everybody a little bit of pick of the punch. And I understand what you mean by the architecture. We have everything we're going for is the subdivision plat, and we can look more at the architecture, but very similar to what we're already building down in phase one, like Nate mentioned.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Nate,
Yes.
if just before we leave this section, is that something that we could look at? Maybe if there's an opportunity to break one or two of these up into duplexes, is that something that we can look at?
I definitely, we would definitely be able to look at that. If we get approval here at Planning Commission, we could look at that before we go to Town Council. And so, yeah,
Okay.
we would definitely look at that.
I have a couple questions. First of all, what is where it says parcel A? What is there in that area?
That is, let me show you. Right now, that's kind of an open space area where you come in off of, this is the Jordan L. Parkway right here. This is the road that leads into phase two here. This is that space here to try to leave it a little bit. I think they were trying to leave it a little bit open, leave a little bit of open space and not put any housing there and or retaining walls.
Okay. Another question is there any guest parking in here at all?
Nate, I don't think that there is guest parking as of yet as proposed. I know you have some parking at the park area.
No, we always have guest parking, so we will put that in on the final on the Mylar. So let us work with you, Thomas, on adding the guest parking. Yeah.
Okay. It's just not
there's room for there's definitely room for guest parking.
Okay.
And the one thing we'd like that we could also do is we could shift those. We don't want to be less than 20-foot driveways for trucks and bigger cars and Suburbans or whatever. But we could shift though. We can make some of those driveways 20 feet rather than 25 to give it a more of an offset. Our buildings are already offset, I think 4 feet. And so if we were to shift the driveways up, up 5 feet, that would even give more of a different feel,
kind of give some articulation in here.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like, how we work. We take what you guys tell us. We work with Thomas and Ryan and put in what you guys tell us to do, and then we take it to Town Council. So yeah, we'll definitely work on those two issues as soon as tomorrow. So.
Okay, moving on, because we just were talking about the park. What is that? I'm not sure I understand the plan for when it
I'll give you a
comes
quick
on board.
rundown. And Nate, help me here if I say anything incorrectly. But per the MDA, the park is supposed to be constructed simultaneously to phase 2. And so when phase 2 is done, then the park is done. But now phase 2 and 3
Oh, are
you'll
not
have
the same anymore.
phase 2 and 3 changed. So the phase 3 was a larger phase, which is now part of phase 1 and 2B, and 2A kind of is most of what old phase 2 was. So what is the proposed timing for the park, Nate?
So Nate, I think I can answer that a little quicker.
Go ahead, PT.
So the amended MDA has the park going simultaneous with phase 3, which is why you see two different plans here. This new plan that shows 2A and 2B is so that we can get that connection, like Nate mentioned, up to Jordanelle Parkway. And then instead of having, limited access into that phase 4 with parks being done with nowhere to get to them, we've cleaned that up to where phase 3 is the parks and actually phase 3. So the amended MDA has the parks going simultaneous with phase 3. So this matches what the documents are more reading, which is why we're cleaning all this up at the same time.
So now, just so I'm clear, actually, so now phase 1 that's under construction now is right here. These are the 44, 45 units here. And then phase 2B and 2A would be completed connecting to Jordanelle. So these 98 units would be completed. And then phase 3, as revised here, would be constructed, the park constructed with those units. I don't know the number in there, but yeah.
Yeah, and we, in our MDA, it says, we will develop phase 3, but before we can start selling, the park has to be finished.
So before
in phase 3, so yes.
Okay.
And it's actually about 70 units, 75, 77 units in 2A and 2B, because we moved those 11 out and those went into phase 3. And so, there's exactly kind of what you're thinking, but you're 100% right, Thomas.
Okay.
Phase 1 brings us up to the 90 corner. We're going to take 2A and 2B and take them up to the top. We would just call it phase 2, but remember the progression of this, the plans were already kind of created. And so with Ryan and Dylan and everybody, they didn't want to have the confusion of changing all that around. And so we just cleaned it up. And it also makes us match the MDA, which I know Polly's probably on. We're going to be cleaning that up to where it matches what the amended MDA says, which is phase 3 will be all parks and included.
Okay, PT, help me just understand one thing so I'm clear. I think in phase 2, this is 50 units here. And then in 2B, we've got
24.
24. Are those the right numbers? 74, is that right?
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay, so it is 74. Okay. So those numbers changed. Okay, so these, what we're showing here, these are the correct unit density counts.
Yeah, these are the plots that we've created. Okay. So that is correct.
Can I also ask a question? Sorry, I just have a hard, well, first of all, it should be 2A and 2B. It's confusing to have something be 2. But why are we, if this is going through all at the same time, why isn't this just one phase? Why are we doing 2A and 2B?
And Ryan can help here. It's
Polly, Polly, that was partially at my request. With our new policy, we're not issuing building permits until the plat's recorded and the infrastructure is in for the entire plat. And so my recommendation on these large subdivisions was to break that into pieces. I didn't care what we called it, but to break it into pieces so that we don't hold them up if one section of road or one utility is a problem, they could get going on part of it. And that's, it's a new policy with the town of moving in a more methodical order, but it will potentially let them get going a little faster.
Okay. And I guess we don't care that it's like, why not just call it 2 and 3?
I don't have a preference on 2 and 3 would work. A and B are fine. For the intent, I just wanted it to be 2 separate plats, but whether you call them Tom and Bob would be fine.
Okay. I think, Polly, to answer your question, we would just call it all phase two if it was up to. I get Ryan's point. It's certainly it's a benefit. But that would be, if we were to change, we would change to all phase two and then keep 3 where the parks are and the dog park and everything, to where we can line up everything and hit where we need to with being able to access this.
Okay, thanks
PT.
for helping that.
PT, are you all proposing to come off of Jordanelle with 2A first and then come through 2B to connect to Bellevue, or go the other way?
We honestly will be doing everything at one shot.
Okay.
So that's ultimately the goal, is everything gets put in one. To be honest with you, Thomas, all the water has to come up from the bottom, and then there is a water at the top. The two need to connect, so we're looped with JSSD's line that we brought down Jordanelle, and then gas and needs to connect from top to bottom, and then most important, sewers all got to come down. So we got to start at the bottom and come up to the top.
Okay. Okay, so you'll kind of work this way and this way almost.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Polly's right. We're going to push it all as one phase, but to break up the plats or whatever, and since the plans were already separated, I think we just, for confusion purposes, they stayed separated. And Polly, we do intend to call them 2A and 2B. I don't know why those others were. You could see here that's our intent. So.
Okay, I mean, that's minor. But that helps, because I don't want to get into this lack of confusion. So, and then we should be seeing a new phasing plan. It sounds like you guys have worked through it, so we'll get that new phasing plan going pretty quickly after this.
Polly, do we need to update the MDA to then match this phasing plan, right?
Yeah, we've never updated the MDA, so the MDA will now be updated to match this one as well as some other items.
Got it. Okay.
Which we were just waiting to get this done, and then Polly and I were going to clean all that up. So we'll clean it up per Polly and the instructions. So
sounds good. Thank you.
You guys will be connecting the trails as well as these build out, obviously.
Sorry about that. Yeah, like we talked, Thomas, all the phases will have little parts of trail in them. Nate came in last year and cut in the rough trail so that we had a good connection through. Phase 1 asphalted it all the way to there. A big majority of the trail will come in phase 3. That'll bring it all the way through the park section and into that next section. But right now, like we mentioned, the trail is cut in as a mountain trail so that it's at least there, and we'll be adding as we go.
Okay. Planning commissioners, do you have any questions for me or the applicant, as I'm kind of just scrolling through to make sure all of these issues have been addressed? That's next phase. Okay. Tony, I think that's all I've got. Go ahead, Glenna, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, don't we need to open it up to public comment?
Yes. So when you guys, that's all I have, unless you guys have any other questions for me or the applicants. That is, that covers our report. Ryan, before we do that, did you have anything that you needed to add?
I don't have anything else to add, other than I think that they worked with us fairly well. This is I think I'd agree with Nate. This is much improved over the first plan, and appreciate him working with us.
Yeah, agreed. Tony, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. If none of the commissioners have any questions, then we'll open it up for public comment. Is there anybody online who would like to have a question? Okay, seeing that there are no questions, we'll close the public comment part of this. And then I guess we'll put it to a vote if we want to give it a positive recommendation for the council. Correct, Polly?
I'm sorry, correct.
And
I spoke,
Okay.
but I was muted.
And so the planning commission is aware, like we've started doing a couple of meetings ago, we prepared an ordinance that outlines the findings of fact, conclusions of law, conditions of approval that we will present to the town council at their meeting on May 13th. But it incorporates much of everything that was in the report, Ryan's reports, et cetera, and anything that we need to tweak after tonight, we'll incorporate that for the town council at their meeting.
And I just see some typos. Thomas will go through it afterwards and update it to say 2A, 2B. Even the
Yes.
typo unfortunately says 3 and 4. So we'll fix that. So when we make
And-
yeah.
And the number of lots.
Yes, that will go in here as well as the area. Now that we have the plans, we didn't get them until late yesterday, and so we weren't able to get that in, but we'll incorporate all of that and correct these lots here.
Yeah, it would be great
Okay.
to maybe remove 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, but other than that,
We'll work with Nate and Tyler and PT to see if we can look at if there's a way to move density around, maybe a little bit. More importantly, I think look at the duplexes and triplexes. I think you guys were pretty adamant about that.
yeah, and offsets or
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll work with them on that.
Okay.
Okay, that being said, we'll put it to a vote then. Glynis,
Okay. I move that we approve. Do we approve the ordinance, or do we just approve sending it on to the town council?
You can make a favorable recommendation or a negative recommendation to move phase 2A and phase 2B
2B
provisions for Deer Springs
for Deer Springs final
subdivision.
subdivision. Thank
In
you.
accordance with the findings of fact and conclusions of law listed in the ordinance with the amendments as spoken. And I'm sorry, did you opened it for a public hearing? It happened so
Yes.
fast.
It was fast.
Yes.
I thought the same
Nobody-
thing.
I heard you talk.
Nobody
You talked.
answered.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Just before we go on, it looks like Carol Tomas has a hand up, just for the record.
sure. Carol, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Barely.
Barely.
Good, okay, so let me turn this up a little bit. Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm new at this. Can you hear me now?
That's
Yes.
better.
Okay. All right, so I do agree with Glennis and with Donna about the density in the units. And I do think it's going to look very tract-like. I know that even at Deer Waters, if you drive through there, everything looks very much the same, like a Mission Viejo, California, drive through a tract home. I don't know that we want to have that same look going on the other side of the Jordanelle and all the way up the hillside to the Jordanelle Parkway, where we're going to have the Sky Ridge development, which is going to be, I think, more custom homes. But there is some concern about it all just looking very cookie cutter. And I know Nate is concerned that we have a very active real estate market here and units are selling quickly. So I don't think there would be any issue with reducing the density and having those units will sell. They'll sell, whether they're 3 units or 4 units in our market, I think they will sell. And my next concern is the infrastructure. Where is the fire department for all of these units? And where are the schools for all the children who may or may not live there? These are just things I'd like the council to address or the commission to address. I think that's all I have.
Is that it, Carol?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. In regard to the fire department, it's part of the Wasatch Fire District. So that question would have to be answered by them, I believe. We have no control over that or where they put a substation. We can ask, that doesn't mean it's going to be put anywhere.
Do we typically get a letter from the fire department for each phase, or is it per development, or is it?
We found a letter from, if you go through it, Wasatch, I believe, has approved, sent a letter of approval in regards to the roads and ways, means of egress from this.
Okay, I didn't see that. I haven't seen this development before, so.
Part of the engineering review, we coordinate with Wasatch County Fire and usually get a separate letter from them, but they're in approval and have seen the plans, and will certainly be part of the final approval as well.
Okay. Well, I like that it goes, that there's a road from 248 up to the Parkway. I think that's a great addition. And I appreciate that you worked with the staff, Nate. So I guess I should go on to my motion.
I'm sorry, could I just point out?
Hang on one second, because there's two other hands raised.
Oh, okay.
Thomas, do you know who's next?
It's Brett.
Brett?
Brett.
Brett, go ahead, please.
Sorry, I unmuted Carol. Again. Do you want me to skip Carol and go to Brett?
I think Carol may have her hand
Carol
up
already,
second time,
Carol
maybe.
already asked the question.
She might have a
another
follow
one, Carol?
I do have one additional question. So with the,
Go ahead.
so all these additional units that are being added, coming in and out of that Ross Creek road, where we have summer people who, that parking lot is full in the summer. So you have recreational users coming in. You have the deer walkers coming in and out. You're going to have the Lakeview Estate people coming out of that area, and now you have this deer steering area leak. Are we going to have a traffic signal there? That is a fat. People come down there at 70 miles an hour, and if you're trying to make a right turn in there or a left turn in there, it is going to be highly dangerous. Is there something going to be done about traffic control there?
I believe that will be up to UDOT, not us, Carol.
Okay. Is someone addressing that with you? Or are we just going to wait for some tragic accidents to happen?
There is a highway corridor agreement that discusses where future lights will be. The timing and how that works is unfortunately largely up to UDOT with a little bit of coordination from the town. So as this works, we can insist on traffic counts and try to promote that. But it's based on traffic counts.
So is that something that the citizens of Hideout need to address with UDOT, or is that something the developer and the city does on their own?
It requires public input is definitely valuable, but it's largely a merit based on traffic counts. So unfortunately, we have to have the traffic first to get the traffic count data. They don't consider traffic studies or looking at what the impacts will be to be proactive. So without sounding too negative towards UDOT, they're not proactive, they're reactive. And so we have to have the traffic counts and the problem has to exist before we can solve it.
Okay, I'll let my neighbors know that. Okay, thank you.
Carol, we also might want to look at UDOT lowering the speed limit from 65 to maybe 55.
Brett, you have a question?
Yeah, some feedback for the group. I mean, kind of dovetailing on Carol's comments there. I feel that while, yes, the fire district, approved the road widths, and like was just talked about, UDOT I know is a little bit reactive, and there's been a lot of talk about the pending camera at Browns Canyon, and I've seen that plan for, I don't know what it is, a 15-year plan or something with like 6 lights between Camas and 40, I think is about what it is, somewhere around there. And so I understand those things, but I feel that the Town Planning Commission, does have an obligation to make sure that infrastructure will be there timely, no different than power and sewer and water. Is the fire department have the capacity as we increase density, the fire risk and the fire profile changes. When you've got more houses close together in a higher density and more people, it's not just the width of the road, but it's the volume of equipment to respond to the fire and the timeliness, because fires will jump from home to home much quicker when you've got these high densities. And these fourplexes are a much hotter, much higher burn rate, and with the modern materials that tend to burn much faster. And a lot of the fire codes are written for homes that were built 30 years ago that don't have nearly a lot more natural material that burns a lot slower than some of the material these days. So I feel that while the road widths are one thing, I feel the capacity and ability to respond to the volume of fire that could happen is something that the Planning Commission should take into account before approving the density. Just like taking into account, do we have, the sewer infrastructure and the other infrastructure? That's a huge safety thing that puts other existing homeowners at risk as well. So I think that's an important thing to consider. Similarly, the traffic, the ingress and egress. Working with UDOT. If it's not safe to have good, safe ingress and egress off of 248, then why would we want to approve plans that put people in danger? And so working with UDOT, if it's needed, to make those modifications, or saying, there's not a good, safe way to get on and off that highway, if that's the case. So I think some important consideration should be made there. Otherwise, it's sort of like the town is planning for accidents to happen and promoting the building density to create those problems, and then saying, well, it's UDOT's deal, we can't do anything about it. But you actually can. You can work with UDOT to say, we can't approve these or give a positive recommendation until that infrastructure is there and in place. So there are things that you can do if UDOT is not willing to move quickly. And so it is a joint partnering with them. The speed limits, I know there's accidents and things here and that happens, but it's actually surprisingly when people understand. I know in the state of Nevada, the speed limit, focus there, and I think it's prevalent through most states, but I'm not an expert at it. You're actually supposed to have the speed limits as high as possible to promote traffic flow and only reduce where there's safety issues. And so I do understand that. We all moved here and it was 65. That's part of why some of us moved here, was we could get in and out quickly. So I don't think, lowering speed limits because density comes is necessarily the answer either. I mean, we've got to balance those two things and not bring it to a crawl just because, some want more density and more housing. I think it's a balance that the Planning Commission needs to think about those elements. I'd like to see more consideration, given to some of those about proactively working with the fire department and saying, what is the equipment and number of responders available, and can we safely give a positive recommendation if that fire protection capacity is limited, because that's putting the rest of us currently here at a higher risk. So thanks for taking the input, and appreciate the job you're all doing.
So I would say maybe to think about, and I agree with you guys, Carol and Brett, not coming from a place of not agreeing with you, understand the light issue and, all that kind of stuff. The school issue is really, that's also not seamless, where the school board does their own thing, development does their own thing. It's not integrated. The whole system, whether it's Park City or here, could be much better. Maybe the one thing to take solace in, I'd like the connection to 248. I'm assuming the nearest fire department is at the other end of Jordanelle Parkway. So this probably saves 3 to 4 minutes rather than having to go all the way to 248 down and around to get to the subdivision.
And the density is not under our control, Brett. The density was determined before our time. Somebody else can, I'm sure, explain it much better, but all I know is that we can't do anything with the density.
No,
Yeah,
you're
let
right.
me just take a crack at it.
It assigns density. You're right.
Yeah, let me just take a crack at explaining that, this was, I think, about 2 or 3 years ago. We went through all the public hearings, annexation, and density was approved. I will say that I've met with the fire department several times, and they're looking at a site, another development I'm doing in the Richardson Flats area, moving over there to be closer to the town of Hideout, which would put them just a couple minutes away. And then obviously the school site, we have an 8-acre school site in the Richardson Flats development, if that ever, if that gets approved. So we've addressed a lot of the issues that there's no ground in the town of Hideout for a school site. We've addressed the fire district, and they're excited to get closer to the town of Hideout. And so, but yeah, we went through all the public hearings on the density several years ago. We have all the, the fire district's not going to send a letter of something that's not safe and something they can't service. And we received those letters from them, and they feel like they can service this area. So hopefully that answers some of your questions, Brad.
Thank you, Nate. Is there anyone else who has a question? Brett, do you have another question? I see that you have.
Yeah, and I totally understand the density is locked in. I mean, there is some question on the MDA and the count of units. I think at one of the last commission meetings, I missed the first part of this. So I'm assuming that you're still working through, the math errors and the acreage that wasn't actually ultimately annexed and how that factors into the ERUs. And so I don't want to go into there. And I totally understand the density is there, but safely building out that density is what I'm focused on. So I totally understand our hands are tied with the density, with a few caveats there, but not, just like if we ran out of water, we couldn't approve things if there's no water, and that could happen. Even though the density's approved, you still have to kind of sometimes stop and say, wait a minute, we've got to slow this down until we can safely do it. And that's what I'm focused on. So I just want to say that I understand the density is not a issue here for the Planning Commission.
Okay,
yeah, you. And on the water issue, we have to turn in water shares to JSSD for our developments, and so we actually bring our own water for anything that I've developed. We've had to bring our own water and buy water shares, and so that's what we've done. So water should not be an issue with anything I'm developing.
And
are there anybody else who has a question that's online?
And just as a reminder, if you're on the phone, it's *9 to unmute, or you can raise your hand if you're on the video, just at the bottom of the screen.
And Brad, or I can't remember, was it Carol who spoke before? If you would like to call me, I'll gladly take your call and come up and meet with you and go over, your certain issues that we're talking about and see if we can satisfy those. So, you can get my number from Thomas or Ryan or whoever, and I'd love to sit down with you and make sure that you guys are happy, because we are hearing the things you're saying.
Patricia, you have a question?
Yeah, sorry, I'm very new to the area and late on the call, but the person who just last spoke said you bring your own water. Might sound like a stupid question, but what do you mean you bring your own water?
So we have to buy water shares, and then we give those water shares to JSSD, and then they put them in their, I don't really know exactly how it works, but we have to buy water shares, turn them into the state turns them into, approves them for the water rights, and then we give those water rights to JSSD. And we have to have a certain amount of water rights per unit or per, house we're building. And the JSSD gives us that number. And so we have to go out and find the water rights, and that's what we've done.
Right, right. So you're talking development talk versus, I mean, water is a limited resource. So you could always run out of water. But I guess I better understand what you're saying.
I think the difference, if I can help, is water rights versus physical water. Our physical water comes from JSSD, the Jordanelle Special Service District. They have a water treatment plant at Jordanelle, and they take water out of tunnels and various sources, treat it and put it in pipes. And so there's lots of that. What Nate's talking about is a concept of water rights and how much water Jordanelle Special Service District is entitled to divert and use for culinary water. And so they have to have that, we call it paper water. And then it also in there is a fee to make sure that the treatment plants and the storage and the distribution are big enough to supply the water that is needed for the development.
That's right.
I don't know if that helped or hurt.
Patricia, do you have anything else? Is there anybody else with a question before we put this to a vote?
I have one other question and comment. Looking at the way that the neighborhood is going to connect to the Jordanelle, on the one hand, I kind of love that it will connect. On the other hand, I'm kind of wondering if it's going to encourage people to cut through from 248 and they'll be going through that neighborhood. And what are we going to do to make sure the traffic doesn't get to, like, people driving too fast? How to keep the traffic under control there?
Well, Rachel, I would assume that seeing how the sheriff patrols over by where I am now through Hideout and Shoreline and everything, and actually today he pulled somebody over for speeding and wrote him a ticket, I'm sure they will patrol that also for the same reasons.
Okay. I'm just thinking it's more of a way that people would be trying to cut through to get to a faster road, which that's when people tend to go faster than when they're just sort of driving through casually through a neighborhood.
To do speed limit signs, there's budget for 4, we could increase that.
I mean, there's no way for us to control that other than having law enforcement on the scene like we do over at this end between Shoreline and the roundabout and Rustler and everything else. No, I don't think anybody wants to put speed bumps in if they're not necessary.
Speaking on behalf of,
yeah.
Go ahead, Nate. Sorry.
I just say we do have a lot of turns in the road that will slow traffic down. It's a windy road. That helps.
Are there any other questions from the public and or the council? Okay. There being none, we'll go back to where we were. Glynis, for your recommendation.
Okay, I move that we recommend approving the final subdivision for Deer Springs Phase 2A and 2B. According to the laws and
findings of fact, conclusions.
Findings, yes. Oh, the findings of fact, the conclusions of law, and the conditions of approval that are noted in the in our packets. Does that sound okay?
Yep. Ryan?
I approve.
Rachel?
I approve.
And Tony approves. So therefore, Polly, you have
Who-
a
who is-
positive recommendation.
Excuse me, who is the second?
Who was the second? Ryan.
Ryan, okay, thank you.
Yeah, I second it.
Yep. Okay, so that takes care of Deer Springs 2A and 2B. Thank you, Nate.
Thank you guys.
Nate.
Really appreciate all the thought that was put into this. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks,
Moving
Nate.
on to the second item on the agenda, it's the hearings for Shoreline Phase 2 amended and Phase 3 subdivision. To consider final subdivision approval. Thomas, do you want to start with anything, or do you want to just have Glenn and or Wade jump in?
Sure. No, I can start, but I saw that Wade had his hand up. Maybe he had something to say.
No, I'm unmuted now, so that's
Oh,
good.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
I was just letting Alicia know that I need to be unmuted. Thanks.
Okay. So do you want me to quickly walk you all through this? I know we've had a few meetings with regard to this development, but I guess I could walk through some of the issues that were outlined in the report. Is that helpful to folks?
Well, let me ask you, Thomas, has any of the issues that we raised earlier been amended in any way, shape, or form?
They haven't yet. That we haven't received any new materials or any amendments, no.
That's not true, and I'm happy to address that.
Do you want to have Wade address that?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So, I mean, thank you very much for your time, Commission. I appreciate all of you making time. We received the staff report that's before you. We received it when it was posted yesterday, and we saw for the first time the proposed findings that had been prepared. And obviously, we're very disappointed to see those. Last time when we met in March, I thought we made a lot of progress. We were asked to update our plans to add some additional visitor parking, which we did. Those were submitted to Thomas and his team, and that is part of our supplemented application. There's no note of that. We also made additional details in adding the trail, which was requested, and we added that to the plat. That's in the supplement. We also updated and provided details on our retaining walls, which were mischaracterized in the staff report. Rather than go through each and every one of these items, because there are so many items that are extraneous to our application, our recommendation is that because we're running under an MDA, which only allows for 2 public meetings before a recommendation is made, and we've already exhausted that, I think we have no choice but to just move on. And if that means a positive recommendation, we'd be delighted. If it means a negative recommendation, we're not, I mean, it is what it is at this point, given the condition of the staff report that's been provided. But we're not fine to have to engage in the kind of language that would need to be engaged in order to address the staff report. So what I'm saying by that is we can all save ourselves a lot of time, and you can give us a positive or a negative recommendation or a neutral recommendation, but it would literally take hours to get through this. We would have hoped that through the time period that we were, we agreed to an extension 2 weeks ago. We would have hoped that we could have worked through these items, but instead issues that are unrelated to us and relate to our master developer have been put into our staff report. And we feel like it's counterproductive to engage in that kind of dialogue, particularly where, I'm intending to continue to work with Polly and Thomas on an ongoing basis. And I don't want to get into it with them in this public meeting. And the MDA dictates a two hearing process, and that's where we're at.
So basically, Wade, what you're telling us is that you don't want to answer any questions we have. You just want us to put it to a vote?
Yeah, put it to a vote, because I mean, I can start going down the list, but we're going to get into this density topic, which is so I would just want to say highly charged the way it's been characterized. I don't want to start bringing in issues that are outside of this particular application. If you look at this application, it's talking about whether we're within the preliminary plan that was approved in 2016, which we are, and whether this plat, which was updated based on the last meeting, should be approved. And now what's being dragged in are issues, so many issues that If I were you sitting in your seat and getting that staff report, I would say, I have no idea how I'm supposed to address that. I think you've been given an unfair job.
Nate, I have a question that has nothing to do with density.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, we're not saying we won't answer your questions, but we're just saying the staff report includes so many topics that it would be impossible.
Have you addressed the issue I raised last meeting in regard to with the Wasatch Fire Marshal in regard to a secondary means of egress?
Yes.
And quite frankly, I don't like your response to him about widening the roads, where you basically are telling him tough.
Well, there's two items there, and I'll address both. One is we did make improvements to the secondary access, and they are in place. And I believe both Ryan and Polly can confirm that. And we did that voluntarily. We actually had started that before the hearing in March. Second of all, we have scheduled a mediation to address the road width issue, because we believe the state fire code is not being adhered to with the requirements. As you know, our existing roads are 23 feet wide. We have volunteered to take them up to 26 feet in width, but the city's not willing to accommodate or account for the mountable curbs, which are part of what's allowed under the state fire code. And so rather than have all of us just debate in front of you how to interpret the state fire code, we're involving a third party, and we're going to all go meet with that third party. And I think that's a better use of your time and ours. So we take seriously the fire code requirements. We've already made a move to go wider than our other roads, and we're going to then involve a third party who's going to help us to show that we're consistent with the code. We disagree with any characterization of our revised plan, which is at 26 feet, as being out of code or as jeopardizing life safety, just to put that on the record.
I would like to clarify, the emergency access has been improved, which was an issue that we found with phase 2. The access issue that the fire marshal has raised in regard to phase 3 has not changed.
Thank you, Ryan. Polly, I have a question for you. Seeing that there's no public input on this because this wasn't, can we just put it to a vote without having any discussion on it as per Wade's request?
You can. I think there are items, and I agree that I don't know how fruitful it would be to discuss the density issues or the road width. But if there are other questions that the commission has, I think this is a good time, because this is your last time to give input and give your input to the council regarding your recommendation.
Thank you. Do any of the council members have any questions for Wade or Glenn or whoever else is on the line from GCD?
I do. Way back in February, when I was really new to the Planning Commission, there was an IGIS report from July, and that's a soil testing report. So those soil samples were taken in June, which was before any grading occurred. And because I'm not familiar, what do you do now that tons of dirt has been moved? Do you have to do another soil sample test, or to make sure that there's compaction? With the recent rains, there's all kinds of crevices in the slopes, and so to me that doesn't really look very stable to build on. So is there any kind of, you have to do it again, or what's the ruling there?
So Glenn can speak to the soils conditions and how those were addressed with our engineer. Appreciate your question.
This is Glenn. I can't turn on my camera, but yes, we've had the geotech engineers out there dozens and hundreds of times doing compaction tests from Epic Engineering on all of phase 3 and other stuff we've been doing. That's all documented. Ryan, you've got all those reports, and Dylan's got a bunch as well.
think we're still waiting on a number of reports, but we have received some of the documentation. That's correct.
Yeah, and Epic's got them all, and I've been sending a lot of them to Dylan, so perhaps if he's on the call, he can get those. But to answer your question, Glennis, everything's been tested, everything's been compacted, everything's getting certified test on all of phase 3, and in fact, all of the phases that we've done.
And,
So what
and is the, oh no, I was just going to ask, is there a limit on how much dirt can be moved? Am I asking that question right?
The IGS, we have 2 engineers. IGS is our geotech engineer, and they come out with recommendations on the lifts that can be done and how far each one, and we do those. And then Epic Engineering out of Heba comes out and does all the testing. So no, to answer your question, there isn't necessarily a limit on what you can do as long as each layer is done according to the layers they recommend and tested at each layer all the way up. So Ryan, I'll email Dylan tomorrow to see what else he's got. And in fact, you've been CC'd on those with Epic Engineering in regards to all those tests.
Yeah, I believe I'll confirm tomorrow. I believe we're still waiting on a number of the tests, but we did receive some documentation that.
Yeah, they've been out there faithfully. We haven't missed any.
And what?
No, go ahead, Glennis. I was going to ask you if you had anything else.
Yeah, I do. Post, the parks and whatever was supposed to review and provide input and sign off on open space parks and trails. Did that happen?
So the landscape plans have been, a lot of landscape has been added to those, and that was in the packet that I emailed a couple days ago to all the planning commissioners and town council. The trails have been added. The trail's been added to the plat. So I think that's what you're asking about. Yes, that's all been added. As far as the landscape progress, because of all the rain last week, we haven't been able to get our landscapers on site. They did come today, so we're still digging out of the mud, but they're committed to stay in phase 2 as long as it takes to get all the buildings done. Plus, we're going to be starting on the 2.5 acre park down where the trees are. So that's all going to get landscaping and grass and boulders and such installed this spring.
Okay.
And Glennis, to answer your question just a little bit further, once that information is fully has been fully provided, we can then take that to the Parks Open Space Trails Committee, the Post Committee, and give that to them for their review. So that can be done.
Yeah, and I'll be happy to work with the Parks and the Trail Committee if they have any suggestions on where to add trails or more landscaping. We're more than happy to accommodate any suggestions.
Yeah, and I can help coordinate that meeting, Glenn.
Okay, sounds good.
So right now there's a gravel road that goes along the backside between the park and where there are holes now, but there are going to be units, and then it curves around and goes in front of the homes that are that don't have they have an unobstructed view. Is that going to be where is that going to be converted to a trail after the after it's not being used for building access? Because other than that, I don't see anywhere else where there can be a trail, and you show a trail in a location that's similar to that.
Not exactly sure where you're talking, Glennis. I'd be happy to meet you on site, and we could bring in the Trails Committee. I'd be more than happy to meet everybody up next week. And probably sometimes from the civil engineering, we put a trail in the plan and then it may not fall in reality according to the grades. But everything on the north property line, there's at least 10 feet from the curb to the property line. So we've got space to do the trails there, but perhaps we may need to cross the road and cross back in a few spots, but it's all been committed to get done. So if you want to meet next week, I'll be happy to meet you there and we can take a closer look.
Okay, and that gravel road that's there, I don't know, is it a connection to, or is it going to be an actual road and it's a connection to the other, what is it, Lakeview?
That gravel road that you're talking about, clear down by the fence line?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the secondary emergency access road that Wasatch County Fire Department asked us to put in. So hopefully, that has to stay there for now. And what we'd like to do when Lakeview gets developed, there is going to be a secondary access from Lakeview into Vantage Lane that's already paved. And our phase 3 also has a secondary access going in from phase 3 stubbed into Lakeview on the east side of that development. So I don't know, Thomas, if you happen to have a site map that shows those two stubs, but our plan is once phase 3 is done and installed, and once Lakeview is installed, then we have asphalted secondary accesses all the way through. Then that gravel road that's in now, we'll put soil over the top of that and then native seed it. So no, it's not going to be an access that people are supposed to drive on. And then,
oh, okay.
So the native seed could be pulling them, and perhaps we could do the perimeter trail through there, but it'll be a trail. Yeah, so there's one access, thanks Thomas, and there's another one. So right now, draw where the emergency access is. It's down there by the property line.
Yeah, by that little.
Now keep in mind, 2/3 of that road is on the neighboring property, Lakeview and Deerwaters, but we were told to go ahead and put it in because there's already an easement there. And that's what we've done. So I can't commit to what will be done on their side. I think perhaps they want to get rid of that as well once everything gets tied in. But we're committed to topsoil and landscape and native seed and trail our side.
Okay.
I'll be happy to answer questions that might have to do with the site itself, landscape plans or things like that. Glennis, did you have any questions, or any of the planning commissioners? Did you have any questions about the packet we mailed out, kind of what the change was in 2A and things like that?
No, I still really actually don't like the plan a whole lot. In fact, when I was going through the soil report from July, there's an older plan that there are some features on it that I like a little better.
Now, when you say you don't like the plan, which specifically you're talking about?
Well, I'm talking about the rows. I just don't like the rows.
Site plan.
Yeah, the site plan. Yes.
Okay.
The rows on the site plan.
Well, it'll have some meandering roads. The buildings will be pushed back and forth and have some angles on them. Right now, it's just a lot site plan. So the roads will curve similar to phase 2, and the architecture will probably be similar in character, similar to the homes that you live in. So lot 2 through 16, just to clarify, those will be the same downhill building types that are in phase 2 now, and that's what we're proposing to change them to, instead of the uphill 3-story. That's a lot taller from across your driveway. You wouldn't have driveways across the street, Glennis, from your home.
Right. I'll just point out a couple different examples, like down in the lower left, where there used to be, like, why did Perfect Pass Lane get deleted?
That was a recommendation from Ryan and Thomas on site planning, that they wanted a secondary stub out there to Wake Rider Circle while Sailwater goes out to stub in, instead of curving down to Perfect Pass. And I think the fire department thought the current layout is a better layout than what we had before, because what it eliminated a hammerhead on those 3 duplexes there, and this has straight access all the way through. So this was a recommendation from Thomas and as well as Ryan at TO Engineering.
And well, down those the fourplex that's down on the left. I guess, and this is just a minor little thing, but there's going to be no view for those houses because of the elevation or lack of elevation gain there. I would move those 4 over to the other end where there is a good elevation gain and 4 people will get nice views rather than 3.
Saying,
You know
Glennis.
what I'm?
Yeah, flip the 3-plex with the 4-plex.
Yeah, but you know, back to that plan that that was on, that's figure A-2B on the what do you call it? The in the soil report. They're actually at that end where there were 3, there was actually a 2-plex. So there weren't as many homes along that row as you have more now, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, I think the difference, Glennis, and I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to when you say soils report. They may have been going off a conceptual phase 3 plan that was completely different than what we're proposing now. So a lot goes into the way these are lots 2 through 16 are designed. We have to, you know, the road grade, the sewer graded drainage, keeping the driveways within the allowable amount. Yeah, we'd like to maximize the views for the homeowners, perhaps. I mean, flipping the 3-plex with 4-plex might be a good idea, but I'd have to take a look at the utility layouts and such.
Is there any way, and I think you may have mentioned this, that you can, you know, make some of the driveways shorter, or the, what is that, the setback? You know,
Well,
change the setbacks a little bit just to give it some variety.
That does and will happen. So on the plot plan that's up on the screen now, lots, like I mentioned, lots 2 through 16, those are simply the same duplexes that are already being built that we already have designed. And those have jogs at the unit lines, you know, back and forth. And thus you see the different driveway lengths. The architecture hasn't been completed yet on phase 3. So right now we just simply have a box that the duplex would fit inside. We do show a little bit of a jog between duplexes, but in reality, they'll probably jog more than they show. And then when you start bringing in the front porches, the rear decks, there's going to be a lot more architectural detail than what's simply shown on the site plan box right now. So yes, they're going to jog back and forth. Driveway lengths will vary, and you know the buildings will twist and turn a bit to you know break it up the streetscape.
And one other item that had been listed before was the that there were only 3 building elevations and 9 were needed.
So a while back, we just we submitted 3 conceptual building elevations. Now, as far as the monotony clause goes, that is part of the 2020 code. Now, we don't want to do things monotonous. So in reality, we're probably going to have in the neighborhood of 7 to 9 elevation changes with different, you get like a type A unit and a type B unit. Those are going to, and we put them in one duplex. They will vary the elevation that way. And we're going to have multiple color schemes that will change it up a bit. So to answer the question, yes, we're going to have more elevations and more color schemes than we have now. We just haven't got to that point, and we'll work with the design review committee and all of those.
Are you opposed to like maybe taking a 4-plex and replacing it with 2 2-plexes and moving that 4-plex somewhere up here just to have a combination of different styles?
The 4-plexes 2 through 16, even though they're kind of pulled into phase 3 plat, they're still going to be part of the phase 2 HOA. So because the HOA has maintained all the exteriors, they need to be similar exterior buildings with similar colors and materials. And it needs to feel that they're part of phase 2. So everything in phase 3, which is what's shown on the boxes for now, those are going to be entirely different floor plans, entirely different elevations, color schemes, and materials. So that's going to be its own HOA. So no, we can't take a fourplex and put it up in the middle of another HOA boundaries. And also the common space belongs to each individual HOA. And we can't very well break that up. Now I'll point out that lots E and F and then EFF through GGII. In fact, also at the top of the Deepwater Drive SS through PP, those are uphill buildings. So that's another entirely different floor plan and elevation. So those will be a 2-story uphill. So unlike the original phase 2 had 3-story uphills where you went on the ground floor and then 2 levels up, these are a little bigger footprint. So you go on a ground level and then have a garage with some bedrooms on the ground level, and then you go upstairs to master, another bedroom, and then kitchen, living, dining. So those will have another elevation break as well.
Can I ask, what is the square footage of these? Are they going to be larger than phase 2 units in general? Or?
I'm sorry, you're asking about the square footage for phase 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're probably phase 2, if you count the flex space underneath the garage, they're about 3,200 square feet, plus or minus. These will probably be in the neighborhood of 3,500 to 3,800 square feet. So yeah, they're going to be a bit bigger. They'll still have the flex space underneath the garage for all the homes. I believe we're working on one floor plan that'll be a 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath, and possibly you can option for a 5th bedroom. So yeah, they'll be pretty good size. So we're finding with all the work at home clientele now, and there's high-speed internet and fibers in the ground. We are working on a plan where it has a master on the main, as well as an office right off on the main floor as well. So I think that might be a benefit for.
So these aren't the same as the Shoreline 1 twins?
Not at all. It's an entirely new product. So, again, we're designing it to maximize the views. We'll have the big glass walls like we do in phase 2. They'll actually have even larger decks than what we have now in phase 2. There'll be similar character and style, similar finishes inside, but it's entirely different floor plan. But then it'll be, all main floor living, and then walk down to a basement with more bedrooms, rec room, and the flex space underneath the garage. I wish I could turn on my camera, but I can't figure it out.
So I believe in the report that Thomas submitted, there was some question about some of the retaining walls that have not been thoroughly addressed. Can you talk about that?
We've submitted, IGS has done a full design on all the retaining walls that'll be in phase 3. I have submitted those to Integrate and Thomas and TO Engineering. Perhaps it was on the Dropbox account. If you didn't get it, then let me know. I can email it tomorrow morning. But the retaining wall heights will vary from 5 feet to 8 feet. So they're not real large. They'll be inspected by IGS as we're building them. Now the plant doesn't show it. Thomas, do you have a site plan where it shows the retaining wall location?
I don't think I have that. That was part of the issue. We didn't have the location for the retaining walls or the walls themselves, like a section. All we had was the structural report, unless.
That's all on the IGS report. It has the locations, the cross section, the design, everything that's on the Dropbox. Let me see if I can pull this up. I don't know how to show my screen. Can somebody?
Down at the bottom, there's a green share screen.
Or you can send it to me, Glenn, and I'll put it up, whichever is easier for you.
1 second, bear with me. Okay, it should go be sending just a second here. It's loading. Here comes Wade. In fact, Wade, maybe we could click through these pages that I've attached, and then I could, perhaps that'll help answer some questions. You got it, Wade.
I'll let you know as soon as it's received.
So yeah, the packet that I emailed to the planning commissioners and town council, it's on page. In fact, we could, when you get it, let's just open it up. We can walk.
I have it. So here we go. I will share my
Okay,
screen.
thanks.
Thank you all.
Appreciate everybody's patience. If I get my teenage boys in here, they could show me how to use it real quick.
Mm-hmm.
If I get my 8-year-old boy in here, I'm sure he could show me. Okay, so this is what we emailed. If you want to click the second page. Okay, third page. Okay, so there's a few questions about phasing for all of Shoreline, and we did a color rendering here. So you can see phase 1 is done and complete. Phase 2 is down there at the bottom left. Phase 3 site plan is there as such. In fact, there's the secondary emergency access stubbed off to the north there, going over to Lakeview, which is off Deepwater Drive, which is up a little. That's the emergency access, Wade. So go up a little bit to your right. There you go. So somebody mentioned that that wasn't accounted for. That is already accounted for. So that'll be the secondary emergency access for phase 2. And then Lakeview is also going to tie in down at the bottom for another emergency access. So there'll actually be 2 along there. Now, we've agreed, the KTGY original site plan had the single family lots down in the area that has kind of the royal blue color. And then we've agreed we'll move the single family lot up in the kind of the green color, which is near the single family homes there in Silver Sky. So we think that's a good buffer to put all the single family lots up there and then move all the multifamily down around the other multifamily. So there has been some discussion about the village center, which is kind of that orange color. We as a developer want to get that going as soon as possible. So 2 things, the main thing holding us up right now is getting the utilities down to that point. I know many of you have driven down, down there, Glennis, you live there, but the little green color or the red color, the future phase, the live, work, retail, that half of that circles in. When we come in for the future phase, the royal blue color, then the utilities will be brought all over to the orange section. And then we're able to actually physically get that in. So, and then the other thing is you got to have enough rooftops to justify it. So with phase 1, phase 2 complete and phase 3 getting partially through, then then we'll start the village center. So we're actively working on the plans now, and our goal would be to start and break ground that spring of 2022, so a year from now. But again, the royal blue section's got to be done to even get the utility, or at least have the utilities done to get them over there. And then as the other phases, we're not sure how they'll land out. You know, market conditions will all drive that. The R spot does require the live work retail section. So we do have 2.5 acres there in the red section. You know, how that'll play, you know, the timing of that, we're not sure yet, but that eventually that will go in. So any questions on shoreline overall concept plan?
So I'm confused. So one's done, 2 is just about done, 3, and then what's after 3? The royal
blue section, which we'll call phase 4. So, you know, or perhaps we might do the single family lots in the green section. We're just not sure what market conditions and demand might bring. The village center can't be done until the royal blue section's done, because that's how the utilities get over there. You know, we could do the light or the green section by just extending recreation lane just a little bit down and then put in some new roads in the green section, but that wouldn't bring the utilities all the way down to the orange section where the village center would be.
Well, what about the red section though?
Red section will kind of build around for now. That's the live work retail section. So when market conditions drive, yeah, the utilities will be close, but that's something we could, you know, proceed at some point. We're just not sure the timing and if there's a demand that there yet for it. You know, obviously as Hideout builds out and more people live in town, then perhaps a little coffee shop or whatever. That's not something we would do, but that'd be some space that could be leased out or sold. Any questions on the conceptual overall for shoreline? So basically what's happened is the original KTGY site plan, we've just taken the same number of approved pods and we've moved them around a little bit. So the purple section's always had some multifamily there. The village center's always been located there. The red section's always been located there. We've just kind of flopped the royal blue and the green sections around. Any questions on that? Okay, wait, if you can flip to the next page. Okay, so you can see that it says construct a retaining wall up there right below the big letter E in shoreline. So there's one there. There's another one below the letter N. And there's a little one down here on the curve of Deepwater Drive behind buildings E and F. So, or single E, single F.
And is there one also under that 3, the 3-plex at the end of?
It's right there where Wade's circling his little hand. So there's
yeah. No, I'm talking about another one. There's another like line up here that I'm wondering if it's to the left of the shore.
I see. Yeah, I'm glad you're bringing that up. So yes, there's a very short one down there by buildings unit 2 and 3. Thomas did have that question. In fact, Glennis, that's right across from your home. I understand that you're seeing a big slope right now. But when those buildings get in, those dugout basements will actually drop quite a bit, and then it's going to be a 3 to 1 or even a 2.5 to 1 slope from those back patios down to upside. So we'll have a short little retaining wall there, about 2 feet high is all, right by the mailboxes, and then there'll be another one that's only about 3 feet high in front of lot 14 through 16, which is across from lot 17 through 20. There on.
Okay.
So Thomas, yeah, you did have questions if that was there. I had my civil engineer take a run at it. He said, these are pretty minimal. I said, well, put them on. You know, I said, I can make it work with the grades at a 2 to 1. I said, no, I don't want 2 to 1 slopes. The max I want is 2.5 to 1 or even 3 to 1 is better. we'll throw in the landscape retaining walls. So the other three are there in phase 3. The 2 that are on the property line, that right there, and right there, those are, IGS has the report. They have been sent to Ryan and Thomas. I can resend them again. It's in the Dropbox folder that's been there for a while. Ryan yesterday asked me to work with the engineer for Lakeview, for Deer Waters and Lakeview. So I'll contact him on Monday. After I'll shoot him an email tomorrow. We're more than happy to work with them to see what they're doing on their side of the property. So we're not putting in a retaining wall that may need to be even buried or changed or altered. So we'll figure out what they're doing on their grade versus what we have on our grade, and we'll work directly with them. So there's the retaining walls. They've been on the civil plans from day one.
And Glenn, you'll have to add retaining walls, I think, around your visitor parking, right? That'll be something new.
We might. Now, those slopes are really gradual coming behind there. So I wouldn't classify them as retaining walls. I mean, anything below 4 feet is a landscaping wall. So yeah, you're right. Perhaps you might have like a little 2-foot boulder landscape wall behind those parking stalls.
Okay.
So, oh, and the other question, Thomas, you had last time, we did have 2 parking stalls that were right at the intersection where you turn into Deepwater Drive off Recreation Lane, and we did have 2 stalls there down off Wakewater. We've moved, yeah, there's one there. We moved another one to the north a little bit, or to the, the north. And we moved the other 2 down there from building D to over by building A. So we just moved them around so that I understand the traffic's not a good idea to have them right there if people are backing up. And also people have asked about guest parking. We have 28, I believe, guest stalls on phase 3 now. And to give a comparison, phase 1 has 25 guest parking for 50 units. So that's half a guest stall average per unit. Phase 2 has 58, or either will or does have 58 guest parking stalls for 103 units. So that again is half a parking stall per unit. Phase 3, we've upped that to 0.6 parking stalls per unit. So we're going more than what we have in the past. And we have 28 now. Again, parking's simple thing to add. If people like a few more, a little closer to their home and the grades work, we'd be more than happy to add a few more on there. So any other questions on kind of the site plan for phase 3 that we're looking at? So all the driveways meet engineering specs as far as grade. The roads all meet engineering specs. I believe 10% is probably the highest we have. I believe we're allowed to go up to 12% grades. Ryan, I believe you've kind of dug into them as well, but if you got any questions, feel free to reach out. So. Okay, any questions on phase 3 of the page we're looking at there? We'll click to the next one. So this is landscape for phase 2. It's a typical unit. There's the grove of trees. Like I said, my landscaper is on site today. He's committed to stay for months until everything gets done, including the park area. And then we'll start cutting in the trails. Now what's not shown on this plan, where it just simply says native seed revegetation behind all the units, we are adding more landscaping there, giving the slopes kind of a curved roll to them, adding landscape boulders and do pockets of design. So we're in the process of meeting with my landscape architect and getting all those updated as well. So that'll be improved upon. And then click to the next page. That's just kind of a blow up, I guess, of phase 2. So phase 2, so there's phase 3. And I think the next page is, actually, we'll stop right there. So the entrance to phase 3 up at the top, we added a bunch of landscaping around there, Well, there, and then right where you go into Deepwater Drive, yeah, there's pockets there. So we added quite a bit of landscape as you drive down Recreation Lane and then onto Wake Rider Circle. And then as well as when you come on Upside Drive going into phase 2, that whole area off to your right, we'll get all that landscaped. And then we'll do a bunch of landscaping around the mailboxes that are right there, as well as we'll put a little pavilion shed over the top of it. So you don't have to get your mail in the snow and the rain. In fact, we'll be adding that pavilion shed to the phase 1 mailboxes as well. Now, phase 1 mailboxes actually have all the mailboxes for Silver Sky. So everybody's so busy. As soon as my framers get a break, I'll get it done. But that'll be done this spring.
There right now, there's right by those mailboxes there's a blue pipe that comes from the underground somewhere. And during the snow melt, it was gushing water. Yeah. I'm trying to remember, is there a stormwater? Is there a stormwater plan somewhere in the mix here that I don't recall?
Yeah, we have. That was just capturing the snow melt because we didn't want the mud just to wash out on the road. So we did a temporary berm on the uphill side of that pipe, but we had to get what we did is we set and Ryan will get this, we set the pipe at a higher elevation than what we set it kind of in the middle of the berm. So it didn't collect any mud that might be coming down. It captured the mud, but the water got high enough it would overflow into the pipe. And then just, you had water running, down in the catching the storm drain in phase 2. We didn't want the mud washing down. So that's just a temporary thing that's basically over now. The snow melt's done. And as the utilities get installed for phase 3, then all the real storm will get put in. There is a temporary storm basin that's going to be installed across from the mailboxes that'll collect any storm water off phase 3 until future storm gets installed. So we're aware of all that, and we keep I have a SWIP inspectors that come up bi-weekly to do inspections and make sure everything looks good, and all those reports get sent to Dylan. And if there's any things we need to do, we take care of them.
And just one more thing, Glenn, with regard to the landscape, and I think you kind of mentioned it, but in the areas where the area is sloped beyond that back of the houses, the kind of the downslope side onto the roads, we definitely want to work with you on some kind of different approach to landscaping, so we don't have the rock and the raveling issues that we've had prior, because I do know that some of those slopes will be pretty steep.
Yeah. So Thomas, let me email you tomorrow, and I'll CC my landscape architect on it. Okay. And perhaps we can set a time up to meet up on site next week to discuss those back slopes. And like I said, now that we got rid of the snow and the mud, we're full bore. Yeah. We'll get it going on this. So whatever design and concepts will get installed in phase 2, I can add those to the phase 3 plans. But we're big on landscape design. If anybody drives over through Park's Edge that we did years ago, they have a lot more we can really do the landscaping we like over there. Hideout Canyon is still pretty minimal on what they allow us to do, but let's work together to add some better design there. So any questions on the landscape plans? Okay, so let's click to the next one. So that's just kind of a blow up version. You can see the pocket areas we've added. Again, if people want more, we can add some more. And right now, again, the back slopes between the backs of the buildings and the roads down below, that's not showing anything, but whatever design we incorporate and install in phase 2, we can do in phase 3. Now, one thing I will point out, all of our downspouts in phase 2, and we'll continue to do it in phase 3. In fact, all of phase 1, all the downspouts are grabbed and piped to the curb below. In fact, Ryan and I just had a conversation yesterday, and we'll install it where some of the water will percolate in rock swells underneath the dirt. And in heavy rains, it'll come in a pop-up bubbler and go over the curb. But we're doing everything we can to eliminate any water erosion channels that Yeah, you're seeing some now, but we just haven't got everything done and installed. So all that'll be taken care of. Any questions on this page? All right, so go ahead, next page. So I believe, Glennis, you had this question last time we met 2 weeks ago. So this was the original architectural and what's platted on phase 2A right now. An uphill 3-story plan. So across from your home, you'd have driveways, and the second level there's kitchen, living, dining, and then third level up there's a master bedroom and 2 bedrooms behind it. They're real similar floor plans to what's over at Rustler in the Eastwood design. The architects, the plans have changed slightly inside, the elevations and architecture's changed, but it's a similar concept. So we're proposing not even building these. This 3 stories is too tall. We'd rather not have you staring at it across the street. And as well, in phase 3, the tops of those ridges block views from future units in phase 3. So that's what phase 2A amend is to vacate these and then plat them with the downhill plans, which is the next page right there. So this is the same home you live in now, Glennis. The downhill. So across from you, you'd see landscaping behind the home, no driveways, and then the same rear elevation that you have in your home. So I think that's all the packet I've got. Any other questions from my end? I know we're still working through some things about the density in the road width, but as Wade said, that may be a better avenue to discuss outside of a public meeting here on Zoom, which is kind of hard to do. So, any other comments or questions for me? Okay, so again, we're happy to answer some questions that may be outside the areas that's more of a point of discussion. That might take a longer bit of time. Okay, so Wade, I guess we'll kick it back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Glenn, for walking us through that, and thank you, Planning Commission, for your questions. We think that, again, just to summarize, we think that if you weigh our application against the standards in the code, we clearly meet those. We think that the staff report introduces topics that are outside, and I think it's difficult for us to jointly be, as staff and applicant, be asking you to weigh those. So we're simply asking for action because we do need to move the project forward. And you can be assured that this will not be the last time we talk with staff. We intend to be engaging with staff on a daily basis between now and whatever day this gets put before the council. And so appreciate your questions and comments, and look forward to bringing a nice project to the community. Thanks again.
Does any other members of the council have any other questions before we put this up for a vote? Okay, there being no questions, we'll put it up to a vote. I'll go first. I will make a negative recommendation based upon the staff report that there still continues to be a significant number of outstanding issues that have not been addressed. Glennis, yours position?
I'll second, if that's your motion, I'll second it. But
well, that's just my recommendation.
That's
you
just
can
your
vote for it
recommendation. Okay. Well, I'm encouraged tonight by the fact that I hear that you're willing to work with staff,
Yeah,
because I haven't heard that.
One more. Can you guys still hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. We're more than willing to work with staff and work through the questions that have been raised. And Wade's nodding his head over there. So yeah, I agree. We'll get all the answers worked out and come in front of council. So, but don't we have two things here that were on agenda for the 2A amend, which is simply changing the footprint of those buildings. And then also phase 3, isn't that 2 different agenda items?
I thought we combined those into 3.
We
because
combined
Ryan requested
moving
it.
lots 2 through 16 into phase 3 plat. But I still, correct me if I'm wrong, Thomas, isn't that 2 different agenda items that we need to talk about to approve or disapprove or however we're doing it here? The phase 2A amend by vacating lots 1 through 16 that had an original footprint, and then approving them to do a downhill plan that would be in phase 3. Now, I understand phase 3 wouldn't get platted until we work out things that we need to work out, but I believe that's one item. And then phase 3 is a secondary item. Now, I believe all our questions are simply applied to phase 3, which seems to be the MDA and the overall density for shoreline and the road width. And I think those are the kind of the big ticket items that need to be discussed. As far as the rock retaining walls, that's already in IGS's report. Our secondary accesses have already been discussed. Those will be installed, various other things. So Thomas, am I wrong here?
No, I think you're right. I think you have if you're asking, do you have a phase, the phase 2 amended and then the phase 3? I think you do. I think we've kind of collectively looked at them as one. I know that as I reviewed the staff report, early on, we had tried to look at both 2 amended and 3 more from a town code perspective. And then you guys had asked that we look at it from a vested master development agreement perspective, which is why we kind of redid that staff report. And we still have some issues with regard to that. But I think that if you're asking me the way that you want to approach it, I do think you're right. I think you have the 2 subdivisions that you're asking for.
Yeah, I'm simply asking.
So I think that part is right.
Phase 2A amend, switch those footprints.
Do we?
Let me
ask a quick question, Glenn. So it looks like you've worked through some issues and you're willing to work through some of the issues with regard to, it looks like some landscape and maybe sit down with Ryan, et cetera. But I'm wondering, with regard to some of the kind of the overall planning issues, is that something that you guys want to work through, discuss before we entertain a vote? Because there are still some pretty big issues that we've just asked questions of, and I don't know that we have those answers.
So if you're talking about planning items raised in your staff report, then yeah, we absolutely need to address them before we have a vote before the council. But but it's the fact of the matter is we tried to buy 2 weeks by extending it to this special session or special meeting. And, instead we didn't make progress on those. So we're hopeful that between tonight and the council, we're going to make more progress on those topics. But to Glenn's earlier point, and Thomas, and I appreciate you acknowledging it, there really are 2 motions to be made. One would be the motion as to the amendment for the existing phase 2 plat, which I think seems non-controversial in everyone's mind, because we're improving the location and improving the so that there'll be access from saltwater. But then the other item is the one where I believe commission is indicating they're going to give a negative recommendation, which is the phase 3 plat.
Can I just ask Thomas, do we have 2 plats in the packet that were submitted?
We have.
I don't recall seeing, and maybe you do. I just
the 2 plats, phase 2A amend, which vacates lots 1 through 16. In phase 3, which incorporates lots 2 through 16 with a different footprint. Those indeed have been loaded on the Dropbox link account that was sent out to Thomas. And I believe, Paula, you were CC'd on that Dropbox account.
Yep.
Those are on there. In fact, there's plat 2A.
I think the way this is laid out now is this is plat 2 amended A.
Correct.
And then this is the 3. No, I know that.
Can you flip them? So
let me see.
Thomas, that's not amended 3. That's an old
No,
one.
I said for 2. Let me, Holly, I have to stop sharing.
Wait.
Rotate 1 second.
Oh, was that you, Thomas? Sorry.
That was me, yeah. Hang on. Okay, why is it not letting me rotate? Give me 1 second, come on.
But just by way of background, Paulie, just to refresh your memory. So you'll recall that there was discussion from an engineering perspective, how it would be better to just have the 2A plat lots that are being vacated thrown into 3 for purposes of reporting. Yeah.
I recall that. I just,
it's still
we hadn't ever, I just in my mind, they were never bifurcated. So I guess I would rely on Thomas to, and you know, his, as he put his report globally, because they were kind of two different, they were so intertwined, but so I would just ask for Thomas's input in terms of 2A, if there's anything else, and Ryan, if there's anything outstanding as to those.
I don't have any issues with 2A other than from the applicant's standpoint, it abandons those units. It vacates those units from 2A and puts it into a phase 3 that we have some concerns over. So I don't know if the applicant would prefer that they both move at the same speed.
Yeah, I mean, despite the fact that they are, I think that they're two separate plats. I think that they function, logistically, they function as one, right? The road functions as a road for both 2 and 3. So I think you do have 2 plats, but I think that the issues are the same for both of them in many cases, just because they function as one. This was, you know, when Glenn initially did this, he had some uphills. Yeah. He wanted to switch it to some downhills. I think they're better lots. I think they're better layouts, and I think that was the justification for it.
But yeah, if you're going to hold up 3, we're not going to hold up 2A. So you know, we'll keep going forward with 2A while you look at 3 issues, because I mean, we ended up combining them for purposes of tonight's discussion and meeting into one drawing at the request of the staff. And you know, if 3 is going to get slowed down by broader issues, we're not going to you know, agree to vacate 2A. I mean, we can go build the inferior product type, which we don't want to, because that's like cutting off our nose by our face. So I think for purposes of what gets presented to the council, and if the planning commission wants to weigh in, I think you just weigh in on what 2A looks like, because we'll have it broken out by the time we put it in front of council again. It will be just like what we looked at in March.
Well, wait, you're asking us to approve 2A when you're moving some of those properties into subdivision 3, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
And let me just be, I just want to make sure, because I've been so focused on phase 3, was 2A approved before, and then all that's being amended is removing those lots to join them to phase 3, or is 2A its own plat that hasn't been reviewed by the planning commission before?
2A, yeah, that's been recorded. All those homes in 2A have been built and moved into. So the only thing that hasn't been built on that road is lots 1 through 16. And again, the reason we're coming back at this point, once we started doing phase 3, we thought, well, golly, we're going to have a road right here. These confront some downhill plans that'll work better for phase, you know, we can call it phase 2 HOA, because it'll still be part of that HOA. So the reason we're asking to get phase 2A amended for a second vote from planning commission is that way it's a separate item to vacate those and then agree to incorporate them in phase 3. We just don't want to have to come back again for this. You know, and again, I agree, I understand we got some phase 3 plant, you know, details to work out, which is really those new 47 lot subdivision. So as Wade said, we'll work with staff and you know, in the next coming days and weeks to get everything, all the questions answered, get on the same page before we get in front of council in 2 weeks from tomorrow night.
And Glenn, just so I'm clear, this section is there were no changes. Is that what you're saying? Just
Yeah, there's no
They're
changes at
built.
all.
That's right. So these were on the uphill side here, and
Correct.
just are putting them
No.
here. That's
So-
the only change. Is that right, Ryan?
No, so what he's showing here, the unit, we're moving this line where your scribble is.
Yeah,
So
in fact,
currently
Thomas,
there's
those are old
16 units.
plats again.
So currently there's 16 units in that area that you'd scribbled on that we're removing. Other than that, the plot stays the same. So I would be okay. I mean, I think that if we wanted to just vacate those 16 units from 2A and then not add them to 3 until the 3 issues are resolved, that would be okay. But I don't think the applicant would be okay with that. But I guess that's up to them.
These, Ryan?
No, those units are already built and occupied. It's units on the other side of the road.
Oh, just over on this side. Okay.
Okay, so the units that are being vacated and moving to 3 have not been built because they're on a different road, correct?
Correct.
So I think it makes a procedural sense to forward, based on everything here, it probably makes a lot of sense to forward a positive recommendation as to 2A, and then those other 16 will get dealt with when we deal with phase 3.
Phase 3, that's right.
So yes, I'm sorry it took us a little while. That is my recommendation from a legal perspective. I think that's a lot cleaner.
Yeah.
Thank you. So then we'll take, Polly, you recommend we take 2 separate votes then, for one for
Yes,
2A
please.
and then, okay.
I'd just like to make sure that we if we do that, I think that's great. We want to make sure that we approve the plat that Thomas had up. There are a number of edits and versions.
Ryan, the plats that Thomas had up are not the final plats. Those plat 2A amend with lots 1 through 16 vacated, as well as plat phase 3 plat that picks up lots 2 through 16. Those have been sent to staff. Those are on the Dropbox file. It's all been there for well over a month. So, phase 3, if you want to pull it up.
Well, I think, we've, like I said, we've got a lot of different variations and we've gone back and forth. I guess my question is, if we're vacating the lots, that's okay. If we're converting the lots to uphill lots that have no road, then I have a different opinion.
Yeah, I understand that phase 3 details need to get worked out before we can record the new phase 3 plat that incorporates lots 2 through 16. I understand that. So what we're not going to actually sign the Mylar and vacate lots 1 through 16 on 2A until we get the details worked out to put them in phase 3. So we understand that. We're not going to vacate them. They're approved building lots right now. So all I'm asking is, do a vote, yes, we recommend or whatever on phase 2A, vacating those lots and putting them in phase 3 with the new road. That's what the recommendation needs to be.
And we're not looking for just so we're really clear, and staff knows this, we're not looking for an approval. We're looking for a recommendation, and we want a positive recommendation as to both. But what we think is attainable tonight is a positive recommendation as to the very sensical concept of vacating those lots into and putting them to be accessed off of Sailwater Drive. And then obviously the ultimate drawing, which has all the details that Ryan cares about, will have to be satisfactory to staff and the council. But that's a very non-controversial move. And, whereas on the second motion would be the motion as to what we're trying to do with relative to phase 3. And there, given all the items raised by the staff, it could very well be negative, as was indicated in the commission discussion before we started interjecting this vacation concept. Polly, does that seem to summarize it?
That summarizes it. And it seems to me, based on what Ryan and what Thomas have talked about, from a legal perspective, it's perfectly fine to vote to have a positive recommendation for 2A and a negative recommendation for 3. And it seems to make sense to have that taken care of so it doesn't have to come back. If that's what ends up eventually happening with 3, then it won't slow them down in any way.
Okay, thank you, Polly. So then we will go back to, do any of the commissioners have any questions in regard to the issue that was just discussed? If not, then we will take a vote on 2A. First, Glynis?
Well, that was my only question was how to pose the motion. And I'll attempt, from what I understand, and you can correct me where I'm wrong. So I propose that we accept the move from the what are they called? Downhill? No,
Well,
downhill,
Glynis,
is that what they're called?
Can I help you?
Well, no, I was going to propose that we accept the proposal of moving the downhill units to uphill units, if I'm using the correct terminology, and that those uphill units then get moved into phase 3.
So what I would suggest your motion be is that you make a motion to give a positive recommendation to the 2A plat, which vacates those 16 units.
Okay.
So you could say so moved.
So moved.
Thank you, Polly. Ryan?
I'm sorry, I just had to unmute. I approve, I agree.
So you need a second.
I'm sorry, I second the motion for 2A.
Okay. Okay, so now we'll take a vote. Glynis?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Rachel?
Yes.
And Tony's a yes on that. Thank you, everybody. Now to phase 3.
Phase 3, I propose a negative recommendation.
You want some help?
Yeah,
So,
well,
I'm sorry, we don't have it well stated in our agenda, and we'll work towards that. So for phase 3, I think what your motion would probably would be a negative recommendation in accordance with the findings of fact and conclusions of law in the prepared ordinance by staff.
Yes. So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Rachel. Okay, for a vote. Glynis?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Rachel?
Yeah.
No, you don't agree with our negative proposal?
It's kind of backwards. So if you're voting aye, then yes, then that means that you are voting to give a negative recommendation to
That's
council.
correct. I'm agreeing with Glynis's recommendations.
Okay, and Tony's a yes. Okay, so we'll put a negative recommendation forward for phase 3 to the town council.
Thanks,
That
everyone.
being done,
appreciate it.
Thank you for your time waiting, Glenn.
Be well, all.
Thanks,
Thanks again.
Yep.
Right.
Good
That
work.
being taken care of, I believe there's no further business in front of us tonight. So if anyone wants to make a recommendation for adjournment, please go ahead.
I move that we adjourn.
Thank you, Glenn. Is there a second?
I second it.
Thank you, Ron. Glynis,
Yes.
your vote? Ryan?
Yes.
Yes.
Rachel?
Yes.
Tony's a yes. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time.
Yes.
You all have a good night and a good weekend with the warm weather coming. Thank you, Thomas and Polly, for all your help.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Good night.